Sometimes when people come to a spiritual place, a monastery or temple or whatever, they come because they're really seeking something, really seeking to know. Sometimes when we come to a place like this, we come because of really seeking and really desiring to know something, really desiring to uproot our suffering and recognizing that either there's some information missing, that if I had it, I could do better in how I walk out my life, or because we have regret for how we are living, or because we think that there is a better way, there is something that we can do that decreases our suffering and also causes us or enables us to not cause suffering for others. And so we seek out a place such as this. But then sometimes we want to get delivered to us in baby talk, except that we're not babies. And so we should be able to carry something, to hold something, and just siphon from that the information that we need. Let the rest of it fall by the wayside. And it's only, a gajillion times that we can say that it's not personal, And so if we're taking it personal, then we have to work at our sense of our personal pain and our personal story, our personal drama around something is what's causing the discomfort or the dukkha within us. And right there is the point or the place of our freedom, that we can be free from what torments us when we recognize it's our perception of what's happening based on our reasoning, which we already know is faulty, which is why we've come in to try to get something extra to add to our knowledge and our understanding. And so we just ask you to hold all of this loosely. What normally happens is when a person gets that owie, when the fire gets too hot under their feet, they run. That's what they do. That's the MO. And instead of being cannot tolerate it when you get too close to the truth. And some of that has to do with our sense of a personal self and our ego-centric nature, which is what's causing all of our suffering. We don't have to give up everything. We don't have to stop going places. We don't have to stop doing things. We don't have to stop having relationships. We don't have to stop living. What the practice points us to, however, is if we lay the axe to the root of being at the central part of our life, that egocentric nature, what we will find is that we can enjoy things or we can tolerate things that are not pleasant, and it never rolls back on us as being personal because we have uprooted or given up the conceit I. That's where all of our trouble comes. I can give up the cars, the house, the land, the lovers, the children. I can give up all of those things, or I can just give up one thing, and that is this sense of a separate I and wanting the whole world to bow down to me. That's the point of our suffering. And if we could just see that and just gradually, every time it rears its head, I see you, just thinking not me, not mine, not myself. Just thinking in that way will gradually shift our thinking so that we can be somewhere without thinking I am here. We can do something without thinking I am doing. We can, we can find a way of living and moving and being in the world that is actually carefree. And now, I'm not saying that because I'm 100% there. I encounter the same vicissitudes of life that everybody in this room encounters. But on the basis of the things that I have overcome, I can believe that statement, that if I abandon, uproot, cast aside being at the center of my life, with all things having to roll through me to my satisfaction, or I'm going to be disturbed, I'm going to be upset, I'm going to be unhappy, I'm going to be sad, I'm going to be mad, I'm going to be, then I can walk this path and look forward, really look forward to every little bit, every little chunk, every little morsel of information I can get that will help uproot my ignorance, ergo uproot my suffering. And that's the purpose of us coming to a place like this, to learn these things and apply it to the extent that we can. Now, it also means that we have to have the patience to recognize that everybody else is coming for the same reason. And so we can then consider others as oneself. And so if I'm having a bad hair day, then you can understand it because yesterday you had one. And I recognized that you were having that day, and I tolerated it. I don't have to think that every time someone comes by and says something to me, and it may be a little sharp, it may be a little dismissive or whatever. They're in their head. What does that really to do with me? You know, and if we start thinking that way, we won't be so sensitive to things. And actually, we can grow up and wear the high heel shoes. You know how when we were children, we walk around, I don't care if we girl, boy, whatever. We would always get mommy's shoes out of the closet and click around in the high heel shoes, you know. And that's just our desire to grow up and be mature, not lacking in any good thing. But we have to be strong enough to tolerate the meat of the Dharma, and we have to be respectful. Otherwise, we'll not be able to get anything. So I wanted to share with you a little bit today from the Suringama Sutra. It's a Mahayana text, and it's actually going to be on 10 causes and effects of our suffering. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because truly seeing what causes dukkha and its pervasiveness is what's fundamental for our freedom. It's what's fundamental for our release. It's what's fundamental for us to overcome or be able to handle the issues of life and not be overcome by those issues of life. And often we define dukkha as only the negative things, you know. But, you know, the Buddha said that when I have unbeneficial thoughts, when I have negative thoughts, when sad situations come into my life, my mind is agitated. But he said on the other side, when I get everything I want, when things are going well all the time, and I'm happy, the mind is still agitated. And so he says not to think only in terms of what we don't like, but also in terms of what we do like, because we're trapped in our suffering both from things we don't like and things that we do like. And so there's this middle way that he encourages us to come to and points us to. Now, my middle way is not necessarily your middle way. And so as a teacher, I have to cover the whole gamut, and you have to figure out for yourself what is the middle path for you. First, you got to know what your obstacle is. You know, you can have let's say a broken fingernail, not all the way down at the quick, because that can be really painful, you know, but I don't know how you work on your computer. Just hold your hand up. She was talking about all the time that she spends on, and I mean, she's got fingernails. I don't get it. My hat is off to you. I'm impressed. Yeah, and so, but there are these times that things come into our life, and it's pleasurable. There is a privilege associated with it. There is getting what we want, you know. But if we can see that in that is also the seed of suffering, then it will point us in the direction of how to minimize that, how to work with that. You know, I am undergoing a tremendous challenge at this time. Pannavati is not well, and I would like to spend as much time with Pannavati as I can. But I have work I have to do. Then, you know, I have a responsibility, not just to Pannavati, but I have a responsibility to everybody here. I have one to you. Do you have a mutual one to me? That's a question. The only thing that you can offer me, well, two things. One is to do well in your practice. That's worth the sacrifice of my life. The second is to preserve and develop and maintain and support what supports you in your life. Those two things. That's the only thing that you can offer. The only thing I can offer is how I live my life in front of you. When the vicissitudes come and hit me, how I live my life, in front of you, and how true I stay to the Dharma. A lot of people come in and they want to do some of this and they want to do some of that. And I'll say, okay, let's do some of this. And some people say, like, I'm not interested in that. I only want to meditate. Well, then you can go in your room and meditate. Don't deprive another one of some level of joy that will draw them further into the practice. I called my master. He's dead now, but... and I said to him when we first came here in 2005, I said, these people are not serious. I'm looking for the serious. He said, forget about the serious. Focus on the curious. And he hung up the phone. That's all he said to me. He left me to deal with it, And I had to unpack that. You know how it is when you first come out of the monastery. You're like all prim and proper. You're like, you're like quoting text all the time. It doesn't really have a relationship to your life because you're not living any kind of life except you try to do what the book says. And that's the way that we were teaching. Some of us were here when we started, like Bob. Bob knows how it was, And so, but over the time, over the years, we found ourselves in our expression of the Dharma that is real to us. Me and Deepa is different as night and day, and yet we embrace the same Dharma and the same truths. And so it doesn't always have to look the same. It doesn't have to sound the same. But if it's the true Dharma, it is the same, but it's spoken in many different ways so that many different kinds of minds can apprehend it. And we don't have to get the whole ball of wax. All we need to know is how to make the next step, how to take the next step. That's all. Or if we stumble or we've fallen, how do I get up? What do I lean on in this moment? And sometimes the answer is never the same for every situation, but sometimes it's yes, get up. Sometimes it's stay down there. Sometimes it's lean on the chair to get up, and sometimes it's use your muscles and pull yourself up. You got to know which one is called for now. And unfortunately, the only way you know that is through experience. It's through experience. Like we want the prize at the end, but we got to go through the gradual process of training. And we say, like, I'm 60 years old, I'm 70 years old, I'm 80 years old. I'm tired of studying, I'm tired of learning. I don't want to do this. Well, then that's okay. Enjoy. When I was younger, I came to a conclusion that, because I was always committing some kind of infraction, doing bad in the church. And like every Sunday when I come in, the pastor was preaching on me. I know she was. I mean, like my feet would be burning every week. One day I said, you know what, you need to find somebody else to pick on, And she was like, what? But I felt like every sermon was about me because I was like doing just about everything that she talked about all the time. And so, but then I realized that it wasn't that. That I was condemning myself. I mean, because I saw that. And I would say, if I'm going to go to hell because, then I'm going to go out full throttle. I'm not going to go to hell over no little infraction. I'm going to do it big time. And so that's what I would do. So I'd have my times of being in the church, and then when I was like, this is going to be a little too much. A sister need to step out for a minute. I'd jump out and I'd go way out. I'd go out all the way. And then when I've gotten like so bogged down in my debauchery and my suffering, I come crawling back to Jesus. I come crawling back to church, and I get all patched up and all fixed up again, But now I find over the years that it was not in vain, and that at the right time, and the appointed time is when one decides. When I decided, which side I was on, when I decided what was important to me, what mattered to me, then all the lessons that I had learned, the ones that were pleasurable and the ones that were not pleasurable, began to instruct me from the inside out in how to live and move and have my being in the world. And so that's what and I love the Dharma because I find the Dharma, I went through, think about 12 different spiritual disciplines over my life. And every time I would go through one, and at some point I'd reach a glass ceiling. I couldn't understand it, it didn't make sense, or it didn't go high enough. It didn't, the medicine, I needed something stronger. And so, but what I love about the Dharma is I can find everything that I learned here in the Dharma, and I can know what level it's on. So I know if I'm taking baby steps, if I'm taking mama steps, if I'm taking daddy steps, I can know. And we can know this. This is what gives us confidence in our walk, in our practice, that we're not victims to what other people think, or not victims to what other people say, or not victims to that paragraph I just read in the book. But from the inside out, I can know exactly where I am at any time. And so even when I'm falling short, I still have confidence. And because I know where I am. If the Dharma can find me, I'm not lost. Our great fear is of being lost. But if the Dharma can find me, I'm not lost. And so that's my caveat for what I'm going to talk about over the next 15 minutes. And he said that these are the things that we should pay attention to. And how this, it is said that this teaching came about was that Ananda and a group of monks were out and they were on alms rounds, and they kind of stayed together as a group to mutually support each other. They'd go into town, and if someone asked for a teaching, they'd give a teaching. And so some of them would group together to just support the container, the atmosphere, with their own realization, with their own aspiration, and with their own interest and a desire for spiritual attainment. And so, but Ananda, as they were leaving, Ananda didn't leave the village. And it says that he decided he would go for alms rounds, and he would just stop at the first house. But the first house was a brothel. And so a woman came out and to make the offering, but she was, as she was handing him the offering, she touched him, and sensual desire, sexual desire, arose in Ananda, and it scared him so bad he dropped the food and he ran back and he caught up with the group. And so it said that the Buddha, with his all-seeing eyes, saw this situation, and he came back and he gave a teaching to Ananda Round. Now that might be a true story, might not be a true story, but it's a good story for learning a lesson. And so he started talking about our habits, and we should know our habits. That's the first thing. A lot of us don't know them, but then when we know them, we should do something about them. And sometimes we don't know what to do about them, and that's where instruction and the teaching comes in. Now he says that everything that comes to our mind through one of the consciousnesses. And in the original teachings of the Buddha, he talks about mind in different ways. He talks about chitta, he talks about manas, he talks about vijnana. And in later teachings, in the Mahayana teachings, they broke that down to, the sixth sense consciousnesses, things that come in through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body consciousness, connected to the mind, which is our projections based on experiences that we've had before, or how we're feeling right now, what we think has happened. And these six consciousnesses then create our map of reality. Now when they get all combined, they produce what in Mahayana they call a seventh consciousness, the Kilesa consciousness, or the deluded consciousness, because we see in part and we know in part. And so that creates our projection of what is happening right now. So I was talking with someone yesterday, and he said that someone was upset, but he thought that they were upset with him, And so he reacted to that, and they weren't upset with him. They were upset, but not with him, And so he was so relieved to know, because now his mind has run off. It's weaved a story, he took a few words that were said. He made something out of that, and now he has this whole story about what happened yesterday that he wanted to call and tell me about, And I'm saying, see, it wasn't even like that at all. He said, it wasn't? I said, no. I mean, like, you're not the center of the universe. Every time you come across somebody, they're not thinking about you. That's something in your own mind. You have to uproot that, And so we talked about it. I said, I'm through talking about it now. Bye. Because that's another way we like just kind of quietly reinforcing the opinion we had in the beginning, right? And so this is that consciousness that ends up being diluted because we have partial information and we weave a story around it. Even when we're listening to somebody, the scientists say that we don't hear every word they say. The mind just gets too bored with yop yop, so it just hops over every few words or even every few sentences, and it just makes its own story about what you talked about today. And so this is how this mechanism works. And so it says then that from these seven consciousnesses come seeds, and these seeds form the basis of the rebirth linking consciousness. They get stored into the alaya consciousness. And when there is the dissolution of this body, the forward momentum then of those seeds will find its rightful place of expression with another host. And so that's why we come into this world with certain propensities, with certain characteristics, with certain kinds of behaviors. And they're like, where'd she get that from? She's 6 months old and she's doing that. He's 2 years old and he's a virtuoso, violinist. He's where does this come from? Did God say, I'm going to give him smarts, I'm going to give her beauty? Let's see. I don't like that one that I'm making right there. It's not like that. And so we have to have another way of understanding, even coming into being. And we don't have to have all the information on it, because if one were to tell you from their own experience, could you believe it? No, but so if we just start from where we are, right in this moment, and what came before that, grasping and taking hold of what we can reasonably understand, that's enough. That's enough to give us confidence about how to transform ourselves. We talk about the transformation, that's the grace. Because we have to do this work for ourselves. And if we know we have to do that, we're not going to get a darn dispensation and woo, everything is all cleared up and now, I'm enlightened. We want those enlightenment moments, but, enlightenment moments are great. And they take great effort to be positioned so that so that you can catch it when it goes by. Sometimes we're having enlightenment moments and we don't even recognize it because we're not looking for it, or if we're looking for it but we have the wrong understanding around it, or if we capture it, but because our minds are so bogged down with rudimentary thinking that it goes by so quick. Sometimes you have like this great insight, and you say, this was so wonderful. And by the time you get to work and get ready to tell somebody, you can't even remember what it was. It's like it just skipped your memory. We can't even hold it because we have so much other stuff in there. And so he gives us some ideas of what these things are and what we have to look at to uproot to uproot it. So the Buddha likens this Dharma to medicine. And it's not a take all or take everything formula. We need specific medicines for specific kinds of illnesses that have various levels, of severity in specific individuals. In other words, like we need a prescription. So if you could think of the Dharma in that way, not in a common, catch-all, like over-the-counter medicine, but but we need a prescription. And then we find ourselves in a situation that when you have to get a prescription from a doctor, a doctor's not perfect either. So you're getting maybe a perfect prescription coming from or through the mind stream of an imperfect doctor. So there's some complexities to this thing, And so we have to commit first to trying the medicine. I'm calling Banyadeepa's doctor today. I'm saying, this you got him on right here. I'm taking him off of that. He's probably going to say to me, like, I can't talk to you, I have to talk to him. I'm like, no, I'm making this decision. I'm just telling you. So if it has to be decreased incrementally, you need to tell us now how to decrease it. Because he's not going to be able to choose whether to stay on that medicine or not. Because the medicine is having side effects that affect his capacity to make that decision. So I know I'm going to have this issue with this doctor, but I will handle that. But he said it's like that. So sometimes there arises not a firm conviction, of knowing what you need. But when there does arise a firm conviction, then you stick with that, even if the doctor feels like it's not the right thing for you. Put it to the test. If it didn't work so good with it, try without it. If it worked better with it, but it wasn't perfect, maybe you should go back to it. And so it's through this trial and error that we learn and that we grow and that we develop. So he said that there are these things. There is lust, there's craving, there's anger, there's arrogance, there's deceitfulness, there's lying. There's wrong views. I can't read my writing. There's the habit of unfairness, of disputing. There is the habit of resentment. And he said that these 10 produce in us an inability when we sit on the pillow to be able to make any progress in our meditation. He said, and we need to know which of these 10 it is for me. And some of us have all 10, but which one is rising up now? We can figure that out when we get still, when we start stepping away. It starts rearing its ugly head. It starts invading our thoughts and consuming our time and sapping our energy. And so he says that's the one that you need to focus on. And sometimes we have 5 things you can't work on, 5 things at a time. Just work on one thing. And when you make a little progress with that one, that gives you the courage to look at that other one and say, not yet, but your time is coming. And just continue to work on that one until you have a degree of confidence, in your own ability to manage your life and live as you wish to live. And so he talks about sensual desire, the kind of lust and greed that grows into a habit because of the things that we have and because of those who have come into our life and who fulfill our agendas and our preferences. And so here's an example of what is pleasurable. Being in relationship with someone that you love and someone that's your partner. And he says, I want you to see how clearly it sets up a process, a manner, a way of living that's inequitable. that they're your special ones, and then you have your not special ones. And so he says, why do we have friends, and why do we like friends? Because friends give us what we need, whether it's personal validation or something tangible. They give us what we need, and we know we can call on them, and if they have it, they will give it to us. They will support us in that way. That's why we like friends and we don't like enemies. Enemies, seek to take from us, or at least they don't support us, so we don't like enemies. And strangers, we don't know about them, so we don't really care. So he says you have friends, strangers, and enemies. He said, but it should not be so. He said, if you really understood why a friend is a friend to you, if you really understood why an enemy is an enemy, because they're not validating you, not giving you what you want. He said you would abandon the notion of enemies. Does anybody have a notion of enemies in our midst? He says, if so, then we need to abandon it. Some people do things, bad things. But when our back is pressed against the wall, we'll do those same bad things to somebody else or to some other group. But we'll talk about that group doing it. But we'll do the same thing. So he says that if we see this, we will uproot this notion of friends and enemies and strangers. And once we start working at sloughing that away, he says we will come to a sweet place, a sweet spot in us where we can embrace all people and just see them caught, in their own delusions. Doesn't mean we don't have to work, at rectifying what is not correct. But he said the hatred of the person, there's no place for it. And that if we were judged according to how we hate others who do certain things, we would be guilty ourselves. So he says, this is the way that lust grows into a habit, because we continually lean into our friends and we continually are repulsed by and push away from our enemies, and because we give no space or credence to the stranger. It says craving grows into a habit because of grasping, and that's a kind of suction, which creates an illusion of chilliness, aloneness, emptiness if I don't have it. Not emptiness like in the spaciousness of universality, but emptiness like in I'm missing something. I need something. And so we grasp on to other people. We grasp on things, to try to compensate for that. He calls it the water of greed. Arrogance grows into a habit because of the abuse which manifests by oppressing others, by cutting people off, by telling people what they can or can't do, by having a kind of dominance, like being the general of a place, like thinking I'm the only one that knows, and not giving any respect or honor to anybody else's journey. So I have to ask myself, do I have those kinds of tendencies? Then arrogance is what I need to work on. He said that arrogance is it's like a stimulant, and so it builds up in us a certain kind of self-importance that people don't want to be around. Oh, here they come. Here's Mrs. Know-It-All, or Mr. Know-It-All, or you're going to tell us what to do and how to do. And so sometimes we need to just listen. Listen. Just listen. Don't go away offended. Just listen and then contemplate. Is that me? And we don't have to be embarrassed about it. We don't have to feel, we don't have to feel any kind of way. But just listen. Just listen. And if it is so, then every time that comes up, that habitual tendency of being the one, who is superior to the other, or acting superior. It may not even be your intention. But sometimes we do things we don't intend to do. If the action is like if the shoe fits, then the more we bring our attention, our awareness to it, the more we'll become capable to shift the behavior to something more wholesome. The habit of anger, it grows because of irritation, which manifests as stubbornness. It's like a man pushed by his obstinacy to avenge a wrong, and the Buddha said that inside it creates visions of castrating somebody, of hacking, beheading, chopping, wounding, bludgeoning, at least striking, and so I have to ask myself, when anger is coming, look at it really clearly, looking at it, and what is its root? What is its root, and what image is it putting into the mind and to the heart? It said, hence all Buddhas regard hatred as a sharp sword, and all bodhisattvas flee from it as far as from their own execution. So when we make a mistake, we want somebody to have mercy on us, to forgive us. We don't want to be outed. We don't want to be. No. But we may be quick to do that. And just from habitual tendency. So think of the one who points that out as your kind friend. If you didn't see it. If you did see it. Consider the place that you can come and people say, he's just having an issue today because I know I didn't do anything. Maybe I'll just hold him up. May he be well, happy, and peaceful. And if you can hang around and with a calm mind, just putting that into the atmosphere to support him at that time, then that could be useful. If you can't, go someplace else. Don't mix your bad energy with his bad energy and we have a explosion. So I was so grateful a person was in that kind of situation. And so that person just said, I needed to go away. I needed to remove myself. So I just did. That is the absolute right action to take. So we need to know what we can do, but by all means, do something. Don't do nothing. The habit of deceitfulness. Deceitfulness grows into a habit because of enticements which manifest as deceit, which in time creates cords that restrain one. So deceitfulness can actually seem very innocent. It means sometimes, we talk about saying kind words instead of saying harsh words. But we have to be really careful with kind words, as careful as we are with harsh words. Because kind words can create a kind of setup and an unreal experience and expectation. And a kind of conning and being supery. A kind of foppery, a kind of it's decidedly deceptive. And then we become unreal. Like the fake smile, always saying a sweet thing, but without realizing that you develop an ulterior motive in this just because it's not genuine. And so he says that it grows into a habit. See the enticement of it. And then it helps us. Now, some people talk about being honest, being brutally honest. You don't have to be brutally honest. You can just be honest. You don't have to be brutal about it. But neither do you have to be enticing. He said, lying grows into a habit because of beguilement, which manifests as fraud, but it ends in treachery. I was watching this Dharma movie called House of Cards. And in the beginning, they had some aspirations. The reason why I binge sometimes. And the reason I do is because it helps you to see like that whole thing takes place over the course of 8 years or something like that, or about 8 years. But you get to see it, over about 20, 30-minute episodes. Well, I think the show is an hour, and we have like 40 minutes of commercial, so maybe 20 minutes. But it helps you to see how fast things escalate, and how we don't realize that how things are a slippery slope, and sometimes we do something like innocently, and then when we reflect, we're like, well, it wasn't exactly like that, but it was for a good reason. And then we go on a little further, and before we know it, they started off as people want to change, want to change the country, good aspirations, good ideas, and now they murdered 3 people in every episode, because the minute something threatens what, the story they've already built, you got to get rid of that person. As soon as they find out something else, you got to kill that one off. And so, and so I see, you can just see how sometimes we look at ourselves and we wonder, how did I get here? How did I get here? And so he says that's the danger. And so he said, Buddhas regard lying as harmful as plundering and killing. And all bodhisattvas avoid it as they would stepping on venomous snakes. Said resentment grows into a habit because of aversion, which manifests as malice. Aversion, like somebody got something, something about them. You don't feel like they deserve to have that. And so there's some resentment. Actually, you think you should have gotten that. And so now I got a double dose of resentment going on. Or maybe they did something, they said something about you. It wasn't true. The Buddha said, he said, people will lie on you. People will say things about you. Just don't let it be true. He says, and if it's true, change your ways. So he gives us ways to work with that. There's no point in having resentment about the person who revealed it. It's no point in having resentment because it was an untruth. He said sometimes we're going to have to suffer being falsely accused. Can we take it? Can we handle it? One has to have confidence in oneself about where they're standing at any given time. This is hard work. This is not easy work to do. But if we are able to bit by bit work with this, we can overcome the pain and suffering that comes when somebody falsely accuses you, or that comes when somebody outs you because you actually did it, or that comes with just knowing you did it, whether anybody knows it or not. And so he says, turn from the aversion and just face it. Now, this doesn't mean that everything, you come out and write out your whole list and go house to house. I did this about you. I said that about you. I thought this about you. Not necessarily do that. You have to use your wisdom about what would bring harmony, what would bring peace going forward. And so sometimes you just have to live with what you did, but it's better for you not to go to the person and tell it. If they don't know it, no need to bring suffering to them. Sometimes we want to do it because we want to get it off our chest. No, you keep it on yours. This is the way that we train. He said we train ourselves. The habit of wrong views. Wrong views grows into a habit because of misinterpretations, which covers from us thinking that we are a separate self due to form, feeling, consciousness, perception, and thoughts, all the way down to the reality of a ego or everything out there being the way I perceive it. In other words, we create our map of reality based not on how things are, but how we are, how we see it, how we understand it. And so he says that we have to regard wrong view as an abyss of perversion. Those are tough words. As an abyss of perversion. I'm going to write that one down. I'm going to place that one on my dresser, because sometimes I have thoughts, and sometimes I even know, like, Pannavati, you shouldn't think like that. Just let me think about that this way for 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to put it away because I know it's not right, But we have to discipline ourselves in that way. Think of it as the abyss of perversion. and then we have to seek out good counsel, A lot of times, like if we want to do something that we already know it's not a good thing, we go and find somebody who gets angrier than us to tell them about it. And then that friend gets doubly angry, and now we feel justified. I sought advice. There was a story in the Majjhima Nikaya where the person came to the Buddha for advice, and he gave him the advice, and he didn't like that advice, so he went to his drinking buddies and threw out the same thing. They gave him different advice. He said, yeah, that's the advice I like. So it's like that. The habit of unfairness is because of false accusation, which manifests in slander. So that could be that it has come towards us, and from the weight, from the pressure of this unfairness, we start to falter. Or it could be us, falsely accusing someone else, and from the weight and the pressure of the deeds we do, we falter. Doesn't matter whether it's coming toward us or whether it's moving away from us. But he says, understand that in this life, in this world, there will be unfairness. There is just no way to avoid it. So we can't fight every single thing. We have to pick our battles. And he said that the more we develop the capacity to not fight, he said a gentleman does not fight. The more we develop that capacity, the more unfairness will lose its hold and its grip on us. And we'll be able to tolerate a slight. We'll be able to, to suffer something that in the past we couldn't handle. We get totally discombobulated. But we'll find a greater strength in being able to stand and to hold ourselves when things are not going that good for us. And we won't have to run from people. We won't have to be in isolation, to stay peaceful. We can learn gradually to be in the midst, and when it's too much, we can step away, but after a while, we don't even have to be away. We can just see something for what it is. How wonderful that is that. And I'll finish these last 2 in 2 minutes. The disputing grows into a habit because of too much talk. That was a really short one. Too much talk. And he says part of that is the more we talk, the more we start by natural, unenlightened thinking, the more we start concealing our own deficiencies. And then I think the final one, if I'm on 10, so that's the 10. I'm going to dismiss on time because I want you to stay until we finish. And so it's like this, thinking about what truly causes me dukkha and its pervasiveness is what is fundamental for each one of us. So I like to close with these 2 passages from one of Amy's Dharma contemplations. He said, these 3. It says, as a bee gathers nectar and moves on without harming the flower, its color, or its fragrance, just so should a sage walk through a village. He said, do not consider the faults of others or what they have or haven't done. Consider rather what you yourself have or have it done. Just as from a heap of flowers many garlands can be made, so you, with your mortal life, should also do many skillful things. Thank you for coming today. May you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you and no danger. May you always be able to meet with the inevitable difficulties of life. Been working hard just to change your ways, stopping all the hateful things you used to say? Are you quiet? Or is it just delayed because you're still caught in stinking thinking?